I know.
Okay. I've got one out of town for like another month.
That's a thumbs up. Okay.
Oh, that was shared.
Welcome, everybody, to the January 16th, 2024 Tompkins County Legislature meeting. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
People stand
I
up.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Andy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John. Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar.
Here.
Lee Shirtliff. Mike Sigler.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
12 members present.
Thank you. Next up, we have a proclamation to make. Mike Sigler, would you come on up, please?
So thank you all for coming too, and I'm just going to read the resolution. This is for the Lansing women's volleyball team who have joined us today, or a lot of you have. Thanks for coming. I know it's cold. This is one of the better parts of this job, is stuff like this. Whereas the Lansing women's volleyball team won the New York State Championship on November 9th. Beating West Hill High School by a score of 3-0 in Class B final, and whereas this was the first time the Lansing Bobcat volleyball team has ever won a New York State championship, and whereas the team did not lose a single set during the sectional and state tournaments, and out of 19 sets, only 2 surpassed the 25 points needed to win. And please clap, that's pretty amazing. The team was able to overcome defeats in the regular season, including to Trumansburg, that also went to the state semifinals and battled back against the loss of key players during the season due to injury. And whereas Emma Best, Jordan Brinkley, Nina Chan, Gabriela Desnos, am I pronouncing that right? Where are you? I know you're here. Did I do all right? Say it again. Oh, okay, I got the last name right. That's good. Cameron Eastman, Lindsay Fish, Lily Gould, Jolene Gunther, Kendall Hathorn, this is going to be a tougher one, Madison Heck, Kristen Johnson, Alana Knapp Ward, Piper Mason, Mia Miller Labar, head coach Nicole Lamy, Kayla Palmer, assistant coach Amy, you're going to help me with this one. Thank you. And Peyton Teeter showed both grace and good sportsmanship throughout the season and tournament, balancing both their sport and academics. And whereas head coach Nicole Lamy has established Lansing as one of the top programs in the state, now therefore be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature proclaims, recognizes, and designates January 16th, 2024 as Lansing Bobcat Volleyball Day in Tompkins County. Going to come get the big award. Come on, coach. Can we get a picture? Can everybody come on up? Come on up.
Where's the bus stop? Do we have enough room?
Where's the, you want to do it right here?
Yeah, she's one of the players.
We're taking a minute.
Also, young,
Okay, Max. I should be in the bag. Sorry. It's okay. You gotta get.
Is it the front?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, go Bobcats. Meeting's over. Thanks, everybody.
You wish.
At the volleyball team?
It is. They just had their picture taken.
Word.
Lost pipe or something.
It needs to end.
Right? We can just move to Class B, too. We haven't been in Class B yet.
Okay, let's continue with the meeting.
Our soccer team's kind of strong.
We will have an executive session tonight. There are 4 items, and I will announce the legal basis for them later on. Other than that, I don't think there's any reordering of business. Does anyone have anything they wanted to reorder? No? Okay. So before we go any further in the meeting, I want to make 2 statements. One is that there is no item on tonight's agenda relating to Gaza and the Middle East. Members of the public are allowed to speak during privilege of the floor on any topic they so choose. But just understand that at this time, there is no scheduled action the legislature plans to take tonight on any international issues. The other thing I want to say is a request to not comment on what other speakers have to say. This is a business meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature. We provide a time in our meeting for members of the public to speak under privilege of the floor. We are not required to do so by law. Privilege of the floor is meant to be a time for the legislature to hear the thoughts of the speakers. It is not meant to show how many people in the room today agree or disagree with any particular speaker. Furthermore, we understand that for some people, it is intimidating to stand up in front of a microphone and address their elected representatives. Applauding, booing, snapping fingers, and calling out while someone is speaking can be interpreted as intimidating. In order to fulfill our goal of giving members of the public an opportunity to state their opinions and ideas to the legislature, we request that you refrain from comments or reactions to other members of the public who have felt the call to come speak here today, whether or not you agree with them. Thank you. So, with that in mind, we will start privilege of the floor. Let me first read the rules of privilege of the floor. Can I just get one of the blue cards? I know this. So anyone speaking today, if you haven't already done so and you want to speak today, please fill out one of these blue cards that's in the back of the room and you can just bring it right up to us. And if you are speaking today, you're agreeing to these rules. 1, I agree to a 3-minute time limit. 2, I agree not to raise my voice. 3, I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. I agree that after 3 minutes, I will leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. So with that in mind, I would like to call up our speakers. I will call up the person who's next and the person after them so they can get ready. When you come to speak, there's a microphone on that side of the chambers and also on that side of the chambers. You're welcome to use either one. It helps if you're about 6 inches away from the microphone, and we'll just leave it at that. First up is Michael Margolin, followed by Dick Frankie.
I'm going to make a noise.
This is a Jewish ritual object called a shofar. We blow it in our tradition to wake ourselves up to the humanity of others, and I found it relevant today. I am a Jewish educator at Tikkun V'Or Reform Temple and a Jewish faith leader here in Ithaca. I am here, even though I understand a resolution is not on the table today around a ceasefire in Gaza, to urge you to remember to keep it important to you. I am here to urge you to eventually, and as quick as you can, adopt the Human Rights Commission's resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel came into being following generations of brutal anti-Semitism and genocide that killed many of my relatives. When no country, including the US and Canada, accepted Jewish refugees, a traumatized people were left to build a home in Palestine. Tragically, the creation of Israel was a pawn of imperialist forces of Britain and now the United States, resulting in the displacement and murder of Palestinians and destroying their homes and communities. This evolved into violent occupation and a current system of apartheid. The recent killing of over 1,000 Israeli people with hostages taken by the Hamas military was a part of the ongoing cycle of violence in the region and a horrible tragedy that I am still grieving. The Israeli government's response is a genocide, where Palestinians are being brutally murdered, homes destroyed, leaving Gaza starving without basic human needs for survival. As a Jewish American and your constituent, I ask this legislature to adopt the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission's resolution for immediate ceasefire, a sustainable ceasefire. Certainly, this action alone will not bring about an end to the violence, just like my choice for coming here tonight as a Jewish person will not result in an end to the genocide. But I came anyway. You will join many other municipalities across the country, I think over 20, adopting similar measures, just like I joined hundreds of Jews, Muslims, and allies here in this county, and thousands across the world who are standing up in similar ways. We are not required to single-handedly bring about an end to this horrible violence in Gaza, but we do have to do our small part. Thank you.
Next up is Dick Franke, followed by Eric Chaffetz.
Hello. My name is Dick Franke. I'm a resident of Tompkins County and a member of the local Ithaca Committee for Justice in Palestine and the Ithaca chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace. I'm here today to once again to urge the Tompkins County Legislature to adopt a possibly revised version of its unified call for a ceasefire in Gaza. The surprise attack on Israel by the Hamas organization's military wing on October 7, 2023, initially created conditions favoring the Hamas forces. Up to 1,200 persons in Israel were murdered, kidnapped, or injured. Within a day or so, however, the greater strength and firepower of the Israeli Defense Forces resulted in a Hamas retreat into their tunnel complex. Since then, a massive IDF air and ground attack on Gaza has catapulted the Israeli forces into more or less total control over the consequences of various military actions. The Israeli use of American weapons and of U.S. diplomatic support has put the United States in a position of at least partial responsibility for the effects of the IDF assault on Gaza. The Israeli Air Force has been bombing Gaza almost continuously since October 7th, and numerous ground assaults have taken place. Around the world, thousands are participating in demonstrations calling for a ceasefire. A ceasefire would stop the mass killings that have led to over 23,000 deaths, most of them Gaza civilians. A ceasefire would open the possibility of releasing the approximately 100 hostages still thought to be held in Gaza as a result of the Hamas attack on October 7th. A ceasefire would allow for repairing roads and other infrastructure needed to deliver much-needed humanitarian aid to Gaza's people who may otherwise be facing mass starvation and other catastrophes, according to many observers. A ceasefire would lessen the chances of a regionalization of the current conflict, which could otherwise spin out of control. A ceasefire might even make it possible to begin talks to solve the more long-term issues deriving from the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands and set terms for a serious discussion by equal partners of Israel's current apartheid policies. In times of crisis, many people look to existing office holders for information and inspiration. So far, the Biden administration has failed to push for a ceasefire, and this failure of our national leadership makes it even more important than usual for local elected leaders to pick up the slack. A growing movement of actions has arisen around the country. A pro-ceasefire public statement from the Tompkins County Legislature would be appropriate and inspiring.
Thank you. Next up is Eric Chaffetz, followed by Darlene Evans.
Good evening. I was here and spoke last time. I'm from Cornell University, where I teach indigenous studies, which includes Palestine and Israel. And I have children who are Israeli citizens and grandchildren. If it's all right, I wanted to correct a point of misinformation before I begin that was spoken last week. Hamas, whatever you think of them, and certainly they committed initial atrocities and war crimes before Israel started to continue its commission of those war crimes, is not opposed. It revised its charter in 2017, and it does not make war with Jews. It says, and this is Article 16, Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. Hamas does not wage its struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. Yet it is the Zionists who constantly identify Judaism and the Jews with their own colonial project and illegal entity. Okay, so all Jews are not Zionists. That should be clear at this point. But what I want to speak about is wider war. This is a headline, a recent headline from a major newspaper, which just simply says, U.S. strikes Houthi rebels in joint Yemen bombing with UK. How close are we to all-out war? So, on a ceasefire, why a ceasefire in Gaza? And as I said last week, who wouldn't want a ceasefire? A ceasefire in the Gaza war should not be a partisan issue, although it has become one. For clearly, ceasefires impact both sides of the conflict, impose a cessation of the killing, and allow both sides, hopefully, to try to arrive at a negotiated settlement. Without a ceasefire and time to negotiate, the killing will go on without an end in sight. In fact, Israel has promised to continue this war well into 2024. By far the greatest impact of this war is on the civilians of Gaza, who, with to date 23,708 killed, and this number just keeps going up, and at least 60,005 wounded in the Gaza Strip, 70% of whom are non-combatants. Of these, over 7,000 are children, and that number keeps going up. And Save the Children notes that at least 10 children per day have lost a limb in Gaza since October 7th, 2023. What this is about is maiming children, killing non-combatants, and maiming them. Who wouldn't want that to stop? You might think of your own families. The longer the conflict goes on, there is also the increasing threat of a wider war. The U.S. and Britain have commenced bombing the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, and Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah are engaging at Israel's border with Lebanon. Should the fighting in these hotspots escalate to full-blown war, the casualties on both sides, mostly civilian, will increase exponentially, with the threat of a regional war expanding into a world war with nuclear powers involved.
So your 3 minutes are up. If you could make your conclusion remarks, please.
I will.
Thank you.
The issue of a ceasefire then is of global concern, and it is up to global pressure, particularly from the United States in material form, to bring about a ceasefire. The prospects of a failure to do this are apocalyptic. Thank you.
Next up is Darlene Evans, followed by Barbara Chasin.
Yes, my name is Darlene Evans. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, also the Cornell Collective for Justice in Palestine. I also have family in Israel, in Tel Aviv. I want to add my voice to others who have spoken here today with these remarks. Western media introduces any news of the Israeli assault on Gaza as the war between Israel and Hamas. Benjamin Netanyahu vows to keep up the military action on Gaza until Hamas is no longer a threat to Israel. With over 100,000 civilian casualties, over 70% non-combatants, with nearly the entire 2.25 million people in Gaza homeless and starving, he understands, as we must understand, that there is no limit to the number of people who may be joining the resistance in Gaza, in grief, in anger, and in outrage. Every Israeli bomb dropped recruits more resistance, and there have been over 26,000 bombs dropped on Gaza. With every mom, dad, child, or grandparent killed, we must understand that there is no way the Israeli military will ever be able to distinguish Hamas from other members of resistance, from the Palestinian civilian population. That is why Israel cannot wage war on Hamas without waging war on the people of Gaza. When Netanyahu vows that Israel will continue to wage war on Gaza until Hamas is gone, we must understand that he is telling us that Israel will continue to wage war on Gaza until all Palestinians are gone, and the result is genocide. Resistance will never disappear as long as people are oppressed. It takes on new shapes, but it never ends. The solution, the only solution, is ceasefire. If not, resistance will continue, and as we already see, this war cannot be contained in Gaza. When local legislators officially call for a ceasefire, we put pressure on those in higher power to do the same. I urge this legislature to act swiftly, to add their voice to the millions of others worldwide, to stop the carnage so that other solutions can be found. Thank you.
Next up is Barbara Chasin, followed by Greg Brooks English.
Hello, my name is Barbara Chasin. I'm a member of the local Justice for Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace chapter. I want to thank the legislators for giving us, the community, a chance to speak to you on this important topic. Headlines are a concise way to summarize what has been happening as a result of this conflict, as well as giving some context. So I want to read some. From the New York Times, November 22nd, 2022. Israel's embrace of the far right leaves Palestinians worried or numb. I'm going to have more from the New York Times, but from a British Guardian report from February 28, 2019, quote, UN says Israel's killings at Gaza protests may amount to war crimes. The article mentions that a UN panel found Israeli forces killed 189 people, shot more than 6,100, and the panel found, quote, reasonable grounds to believe that Israeli snipers shot at journalists, health workers, children, persons with disabilities, knowing they were clearly recognizable as such. Note this was a nonviolent action by Gazans. A number of New York Times headlines from 2022 to the present remind us that besides Gaza, there is also the ongoing violent Israeli occupation of Palestinian West Bank communities. Attacks by, and these are the headlines, attacks by settlers raise alarm in a more violent West Bank. Another headline, we have no option but to live in the cave. This is the headline, quotes a West Bank Palestinian who has had to flee along with others from his home. They were expelled. Another headline, with fear and sheep, settlers run off West Bank herders. They, settlers, terrorize us Palestinians at night, send messages to leave the village, back to Gaza. Israel got this is from 2023. Israel got financed secrets of Hamas but did not act. From a year before. Israeli blockade takes steep toll on Gazans' fishing industry and diet. More recently, 2024. UN says Gaza is approaching famine's brink. Nicholas Kristof, New York Times columnist, asks, so many child deaths in Gaza, and for what? Another headline, for Gaza's babies, war effects will never end. Very recently, a couple of days ago, fears of Gaza famine and suffering deepens. People have mentioned the involvement. All right, I'm going to stop. So perhaps instead of asking why should this legislative body pass a ceasefire resolution, we should be asking why shouldn't they, for all the reasons people have given. And your voice amplifies ours, so we hope that that will happen. Thank you.
Next up is Greg Brooks English, followed by Amber Galensky.
Good evening. I want to thank you for listening to us, and I want to ask you to reflect on with liberty and justice for all. Does that mean just for Americans? Or does that mean for humans? Who are we? Who do we want to be? And as our representatives, I ask you, I implore you to reach into your heart and ask yourself, who are you? Who do you want to be in this sea of mediocrity? Yesterday was the celebration of one of our greatest leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. And he said some of the most beautiful things our culture has ever heard. And one of those things was that, to my shame, the US, not Israel, not Gaza, was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. What are we championing? What are we about as a nation, as a state, the empire state, and as a county? Do we want to follow biblical law or the International Criminal Justice Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court of Justice, who has ruled that it is genocide? It is not about Hamas. It is about starving and killing an entire people. That is clear. In fact, what Israel is doing is pushing Gazans into the hands of Hamas, not the opposite. We have to destroy the village to save it? Are we still there in Vietnam? I think not. I think we would have evolved beyond that point, yes? And finally, why does it matter that we pass this resolution? It matters because no one else is doing it. Our senators are bought and paid for by very big moneyed vested interests. I hope they are not in your pockets. I hope you can raise to the occasion. Thank you.
Next up is Amber Galensky, followed by Mahmoud Burton.
Hello, my name is Amber Gillespie, and I am a constituent. I've spoken here before on the issue of Palestine. I've witnessed Israelis' brutal occupation of the Palestinian people myself in 2015 when I went on a peace delegation to Israel-Palestine. After joining the Palestinians in the village of Beilin in the West Bank in a peaceful protest, we were tear gassed with gas canisters made in Pennsylvania. It has been approximately 102 days since the escalated genocide of Gaza has continued, and I'm asking that the Tompkins County Legislature adopt a ceasefire resolution. This is not just an international issue. This is a local issue as well as a national issue, since our tax dollars are directly supporting the Israeli military and the bombs that are being dropped daily on the people of Gaza. History will not look fondly on the role that U.S. politics and politicians have played in this genocide. So I urge you to do the right thing for history, for your own conscience, and most importantly, for the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Next up, Mahmoud Burton, followed by Teresa Alt.
Hello. I'm a leader in the local Muslim community, and thank you for this opportunity to address the council, the assembly, and the community members. I speak in solidarity with many, many, many in the Muslim community who support the basic points that were brought up in the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission resolution, and I urge our legislature to draft and adopt a similar resolution. It is our moral imperative to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, the immediate restoration of food, water, electricity, and medical supplies, unrestricted entry of humanitarian assistance, and the upholding by all sides of the international human rights laws. The statistics have been shared by others, so I will not belabor you with those. But I think the important point to make here is that in the course of this conflict, new boundaries have been crossed. The targeting of United Nations schools, refugee camps, churches and mosques, ambulances and hospitals make this an unprecedented situation that continues as we speak. This is to the collective shame of those everywhere who support or are complicit in providing political cover for a status quo that upholds a different standard of rights for the Palestinian people than we would demand for ourselves in any circumstance. A continuation of these present hostilities cannot resolve the conflict or address the underlying issues that gave rise to it. A continuation of ongoing collective punishment and indiscriminate slaughter of civilians does not promote greater security for Israel or any of the peoples in the region, and the unconditional support given by our country tarnishes our reputation as an upholder of basic human rights in the eyes of the world. One does not have to favor any side in this situation to conclude that its consequence is terrible for everyone involved. So why then do we as Muslims urge this legislative body to adopt a resolution calling for a ceasefire in a place so remote from our little county here? We do so because the actions taken here influence the well-being of your constituents. It is clear from the interfaith work that I am actively engaged in that members of both the Muslim and Jewish communities are negatively impacted by this conflict in ways that are not fully understood by most of the non-Jewish or Muslim majority. Action taken by our representatives is meaningful on a local level to the communities that are most affected. We call for this legislative body to adopt a resolution because we are participants in a political process in the country that has the greatest influence to stop this conflict by withdrawing funding and support. We therefore have greater responsibility than most people on this planet to show leadership in this time when the whole idea of universal human rights is being put to a test and the threat of extending war looms. We must do more to press for an immediate ceasefire. Thank you.
Teresa Alt, followed by Ruth Yarrow.
I'm Teresa Alt of 206 Eddy Street, City of Ithaca. I urge you to complete and adopt a resolution along the lines of the one passed by the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It is the right thing to do, as the now nearly 24,000 to 31,000 dead there are a completely disproportionate response to the fraction dead or held hostage in the criminal Hamas assault, itself a response to earlier Israeli acts. You really need a set of two resolutions or letters, one calling on the federal government to stop financing Israel's war, the other calling on New York State to stop letting its taxes be used to arm Israeli settlers in Palestine. U.S. aid to Israel has impacts on Tompkins County. The federal government sends billions of dollars for lethal military equipment to Israel. Meanwhile, there is not enough federal money for more desperately needed Section 8 housing vouchers. This message would be for President Biden, our senators, and representative. New York State grants charitable status, hence tax deductions, to so-called charities that help equip Israeli settlers in Palestine to destroy Palestinian property and injure and even kill Palestinians. There is a bill in Albany called Not on Our Dime that addresses this. Thank you.
Next up is Ruth Yarrow, followed by Jeff Furman.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Yarrow. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission. The concerns that you've heard here are reaching Congress. There's a resolution now, Senate Resolution 504, that calls for no use of our tax dollars to commit war crimes. This connection between our funds and the weaponry that's being used against Palestinians is something that Martin Luther King Jr. brought up in his speech in April 4th, 1967. He noted that the buildup in Vietnam was eviscerating the poverty program, the anti-poverty program. He recognized the difficulty that you all face in dealing with issues like this, and I'll use his words. People do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in time of war. Nor does the human spirit move without great difficulty against all the apathy of conformist thought within one's own bosom and in the surrounding world. So it's not easy to do what we're asking you to do. But I'd like to end with his words that I think summarize it. He said, "A time comes when silence is betrayal." Thank you.
Up is Jeff Furman, followed by Deirdre Silverman.
Good evening. First, I want to just quickly tell the legislators that I have had postcards put in their mailbox on a separate topic that has to do with the increase in democracy and a voting contest between all the counties. The other ones are going to get mailed. We have 188 already stamped ones that will be going into the post office in the next few days. But today I'm here to support the ceasefire resolution. And let me start off by being clear that what happened on October 7th is tragic and horrific as what has taken place since. A part of my background is that I have traveled to Palestine 3 times. The first time with the Dorothy Cotton Institute, with Dorothy herself, with Vincent Harding, who actually wrote the speech that King gave at the anti-war speech on April 4th, 1968. So he was there, James Turner, a bunch of us from here in Ithaca went, rabbis went, we went to see. It's hard to realize what is going on there unless you've gone to see it. But we were in the West Bank and stood with farmers who were Palestinian and couldn't get on their land because of fences, and learned all about the water crisis and everything like that. We went there just to learn and to understand, and I came back so moved by it that I called it an apartheid condition in the West Bank. Then I took a second trip because I was connected to Ben & Jerry's with other board members and staff to go visit Palestine and Israel, because it was a company thing and a big name. The Israeli government met with us, and they went through what they really wanted to do, and they were very, very clear and honest. They said they wanted to have all the land in the West Bank and would get it. That is in their words, and I'm very clear that that's what they actually did. Today, sort of based on that trip and the history of the trip and going and learn and seeing it for yourself, Ben & Jerry's formally announced its support for a total ceasefire, the first company in the United States to actually do that. And that stemmed a lot from our early years when over 50 years ago, which I can hardly imagine, we came up with a statement that we wanted our company to do, which said, "We seek and support nonviolent ways to achieve peace and justice. We believe government resources are more productive meeting the needs of humanity than in building and maintaining weapon systems." Excuse me. And we also started something called 1% for Peace, which is use 1% of the Defense Department budget for peaceful ways, which it would be $9 billion. Using that kind of money to help make peace might have made it. Those are the kinds of things we would like to try to do. Thank you very much.
Up is Deirdre Silverman, followed by Zachary Wynn.
I'm Deirdre Silverman. I've been a resident of Tompkins County since 1970. I was also going to talk about Martin Luther King, but I think you've gotten that message by now. So I would like to address a couple of points that were raised at your January 2nd meeting. One of you, I don't remember who it was, said that you didn't need a ceasefire resolution because there had been a ceasefire until Hamas broke it on October 7th. There was no ceasefire. Israel had been killing Palestinians for years. Israel had been imposing a caloric intake limit on the people of Gaza, limiting the amount of food that could come into the territory. The ceasefire did not exist. Another point that was raised was the issue of historical context. Someone said that those of us who support the resolution had too narrow a framework, that we were looking at the last 75 years rather than the thousands of years of oppression of Jews. And it's true. Jews were expelled from England, Spain, Portugal. We were murdered by Russians and Poles and Germans and Ukrainians and Hungarians. But that is not a justification for killing. That is not a justification for starving people. The Germans called us Schweinhunds, and we call the Palestinians human animals. We cannot use our oppression as an excuse to turn the Palestinians into our Jews. Thank you.
Up is Zachary Wynn, followed by Katie Church.
Good evening. My name is Zach Wynn. Earlier today, I sent an email with a link to a Reddit thread about aggressive panhandling on the Commons. Individuals describe activities ranging from harassment to assault, and I'd ask you to please take the time to examine it. I would also like to call your attention to a recent fire in Jungle Number 1. I sent you a story. I wrote about it. These fires have grown more frequent and are either arsons or accidental fires that inevitably occur in the makeshift encampments of the jungle. I included a link to drone photos taken of Jungle Number 1 on January 5th. They show at least 4 gas cans near a generator about a dozen feet from approximately 20 propane cylinders. Also, I was leaving Wegmans last week when a man asked me for money. He told me he had been assaulted in the jungle nearby the night before by 2 men and a woman who then set his camp on fire. This account aligned with a resident of Nate's Floral Estates' claim of a fire in the jungle the previous evening. I would also like to call your attention to comments made by Deb Wilkie of Second Wind Cottages at the January meeting of the Ithaca Common Council. She recounted the death of someone she was able to get into supportive housing from the jungle, housing with cockroaches, needles, and animal feces. The gentleman died not long after living in the supportive housing, and she believes that he would likely still be alive had he not gotten into supportive housing. Her conditions aligned with what I witnessed while inside the Art House apartments, documenting conditions there for a story I also sent you. I do not know what kind of influence the county can exercise on the Art House owner Vecino Group, but I appeal to members of the legislature to do whatever is within your regulatory power to aid the residents of the Art House in returning the building to a safe and livable condition. An Art House resident told me that the building was, quote, worse than the shelter. It is open to anyone who wants to walk in off the street, and a recent press release from the sheriff describes a January 11th vehicle chase that terminated at the Art House. The driver was in possession of a large amount of methamphetamine packaged for sale. The same press release describes a traffic stop that resulted in the seizure of more than a half ounce of methamphetamine and the discovery of a meth lab in Newfield. Methamphetamine has an undeniable presence in the county. Legislator Brooks, I understand that you are the co-chair of the opioid task force, and I'd like to ask you to consider the possibility of expanding the task force purview to include methamphetamine, and if this is not possible, creating a task force specific to meth. Lastly, I direct you to photos of an encampment that is on the Cuga Waterfront Trail beneath the bridge on Buffalo Street. I know the occupant has spoken with DSS, and when I asked her why she was not in the shelter, she said, because it is a shelter. I do not know what the solution is to this issue, but I am certain that allowing someone to potentially freeze to death in public is not it. And I once again ask that the opiate settlement funds be used to buy the Cancer Resource Center on State Street and rapidly transform it into additional shelter space. Thank you.
Next up is Katie Church, and then after that we'll go to Liz Radman, who's in the Zoom waiting room.
Hi, thank you for listening to us. My name is Katie Church. I grew up here, I went to school here, I'm raising children here, and I work here. Sounds like we could use some of that war tax money for social service programs. I ask that you vote in favor of a ceasefire resolution for the Israeli war in Gaza and the West Bank. I heard in this room recently that that could be ineffective, and what could a county like our size do about that? And I can assure you that every step towards protecting human rights and defunding war makes a significant and rippling effect on the entire world. What we speak up for and what we remain silent on impacts the favor of our personal and collective integrity. Even if a resolution from the Tompkins County Legislature did not have any impact on the greater global war economy or on international human rights, it would have an impact on our collective being and on individuals who are not feeling safe, seen, or heard in this county. And in fact, Tompkins County, we have much more of an intertwined financial relationship with the state of Israel than is easily apparent through our coexistence with Cornell University, and our reach is more than we might at first credit. the Cornell Technion partnership, which I think some other people have spoke about and will speak about again, which is a tech campus that is shared finances students with Cornell in New York City. The Technion students and Cornell students work to design drone surveillance and military missile defense products and systems. Cornell University's financial ties and gains from this war tech partnership with the state of Israel are not only immoral, they do not benefit the citizens of Tompkins County, who gain very little in repayment for hosting the university in our county and all the expenses that that incurs. Cornell University is in our debt, and we hold the right to condemn their actions. As a last point relating to how the local issue of funding the Israeli military as it conducts genocide in the Palestinian people, as people have said, 58% of federal taxes go to fund the U.S. military, and of that tax burden, a significant amount goes to the state of Israel yearly. The city of Ithaca residents alone contribute about $500,000 per year directly to funding the Israeli military. The federal government is not prioritizing the care of its citizens, and therefore it is in our debt, and we have the right to condemn their actions, and we can start at the local level. For reasons of moral integrity, community safety, and to affirm that we as a county are committed to taking care of each other as a priority over funding war and human rights violations, I ask that you vote in favor of the Office of Human Rights resolution to publicly call for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Liz Radman, who's in the Zoom waiting room, and that'll be followed by Beth Harris.
I just wanted to say that I am absolutely in support of a ceasefire and supporting a genocide in any way, shape, or form. It's just uncondonable. And Ithaca needs to take action and support this ending of just slaughtering people who are innocent. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next up is Beth Harris, followed by Marianne Grady-Flores.
Hi. I was here last time you met, and there was a decision to form a working group to create a resolution. And I support that effort, and I'm here to keep encouraging movement on that process. It's actually quite urgent. We don't feel it being so far away. Our government's complicity with the mass killing and completely unaccountability has to be an issue for all people in the United States, wherever our location and whatever our professions, including local governments like our Tompkins County Legislature. I feel this particularly acutely as an American Jew. When I visited a concentration camp just outside Berlin, Sachsenhausen, I took public transportation, and I had to walk through the neighborhood to the camp. And as I walked through the neighborhood, I wondered, what did the people here do? I mean, I thought they didn't do anything while people were being slaughtered in the camp. And I imagine that they thought to themselves, there's nothing I can do. This is the government's responsibility. I don't have anything to do with it. And also, they said afterwards, I didn't know, even though it was right next door. Actually, they might not have known. So, you know, here now, in the case of what's going on in Gaza, it may seem like it's far away. But actually, the United States has bases all over the world. It's involved with military actions everywhere. And this puts us in a position where we need to make the government accountable. We are responsible. And though this seems far away, everyone can see what's going on there. You can see the children dying, being piled up, you know, because there's no place to bury them. You can see the whole neighborhoods being bombed. We all know, everyone can see it. You actually have to decide, I don't want to see it, to see it. And so what does that mean for us? In addition, our primary employer in Ithaca is Cornell. And as it's been said, it has a partnership with Technion, an Israeli university, while the Palestinian universities are being bombed to smithereens. I visited the universities that have been bombed in Gaza. And clearly, we're taking sides of who deserves support and who deserves to die. Human rights resolution that has been proposed gives us a language to address these atrocities in fair terms that are appropriate to the county legislature.
Next up is Marianne Grady Flores, followed by Geronimo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marianne Grady Flores. I'm long time. My family's been in Ithaca for 50 years this last September. I live downtown in Ithaca. I just drew a very rough map of the Mediterranean, and I've got 3 U.S. battleships, or no, 2 battleships and 1 submarine here. I also have in this red strip down here, 25 miles by 5 miles at the widest part is Gaza. And I've got these little red dots. Can you see the red dots? Can anybody not see them? The red dots are not just in the Mediterranean. I call it the slice of pizza off the coast of Gaza. Gaza is the crust of the pizza slice. Those red dots also exist in the West Bank. Those represent gas wells that are worth trillions of dollars. I've not sent you guys the email yet. I plan to do this with a man, I think he's from South Africa, who explains this gas deal that Hamas was trying to negotiate with the British gas. The Israelis threw a tantrum when they found out that this was happening. And they said, no, 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 we'll give you 25% of the profits, and not in revenues, but in supplies. So you know how they say, follow the money. We need to look at what's going on behind the scenes. The only way, when the Hamas turned around and tried to negotiate with Egypt, that's when Israel threw the tantrum. And Tony Blair got in the way and said, no, 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 you're not going to negotiate with Egypt. Come back and we'll help you seal the deal. But Israel is going to be the one in charge. Well, the British, the French, the Germans, and the US, who have their interests in this, decided, well, we can't deal with keeping control of these trillions of dollars worth of gas as long as Hamas exists and is in charge. And by the way, I was in Jerusalem when Jimmy Carter came. I was in the King David Hotel in the room where he came to report on his negotiations with Hamas, where he had been in Lebanon. This was April of 2008. And he asked the question, he asked Hamas leaders, he said, can you give up violence? Their answer was, if we do that, our story will disappear. I was working at the time in the South with trying to prevent the Israeli soldiers from closing orphanages, a boys' orphanage and a girls' orphanage. We ended up having the same outcome like Hamas, where they say, or any press says, if it bleeds, it leads. Anyway, I will leave it there. We didn't get coverage. Hamas's story disappears. The Palestinian story disappears unless there's a struggle that bleeds. So I will send you an email. I'll send you the video with this description of what this is about in more detail, along with many other little snippets. We're not getting the story in the media. All CNN stories have to go through the Jerusalem
Your 3
office.
minutes is up. If you could conclude. Thank you. Okay, next up is Geronimo, followed by Madeline Spellman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Geronimo Pinto. I'm a student at Cornell University, and I'd like to voice my total support for the ceasefire resolution. I would like to kind of bring awareness to what other speakers have already said, that this is an extremely local issue, and Cornell's presence in Ithaca makes that more so. Not only do we have Technion, which, as other speakers have said, does provide and contribute to development of weapons and technologies used by the IDF to commit genocide and perpetuate apartheid throughout occupied Palestine, but also Cornell has extensive corporate partnerships with a number of weapons manufacturing companies that are completely complicit and actively benefiting and profiting from this ongoing genocide. These companies include Raytheon, they include Lockheed Martin, they include Bay Systems. Not only is Cornell actively partnered with these companies, making it so that students can find an easy way to be siphoned into being employed by these companies who are currently profiting off genocide, as I said before, but they're also actively invested in many of these companies. So again, I would like to voice my utmost support. I'd like to affirm that this is a completely local issue for all of the reasons already mentioned. I would like to also say that I urge everybody to resist this genocide, which is horrific beyond all of our comprehension in this chamber and wherever you may be able to. Thank you.
Next up is Madeline Spellman, followed by Ellen Grady.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to me tonight. My name is Madeline Spellman. I'm a member of the Friends meeting here in town. I'm an employee of Cornell University, and I live in the town of Ithaca. I came to the town of Ithaca board meeting a month or two ago to also ask them to call for a ceasefire resolution when it also wasn't on the books. I just went there by myself. And I would just like to say, you know, we're taking quite a lot of time tonight out of your schedule. I know we all have jobs, we're all very busy, and it's quite an inconvenience, but it's going to be inconvenient until the genocide stops. It's not very convenient for the people of the world with a heart to see massive civilian death tolls, no matter where it is or who it's done to. I'd also like to say that I see Ukrainian flags in support of Ukraine in this county legislature because I assume of the massive civilian death toll in Ukraine. And I would just like to posit the query of why it is not unspeakable to support the murdered civilians of Ukraine while it is controversial to support the murdered civilians of Gaza. Could it be due to their color? Could it be due to their religion? Could it be due to the massive dehumanization campaign that has been launched against Palestinians for many, many years? As a trans woman, I am very sympathetic to any victim of dehumanization campaigns. The way that people talk about Palestinians and Muslims is very similar to how politicians in the South talk about me and my people, that we are vicious, perverted freaks out for blood or what have you. It's really disgusting to hear the things that people say about innocent people that are the victims of violence. And that is how a lot of violence is carried out, is by reversing victimhood and by blaming people for their own oppression. So my concern is also, I hate seeing any innocent person die. I hate seeing anybody die, period. And as a Quaker, each human life is precious in my eyes, and I don't see why Palestinian lives should be valued any less than Ukrainian lives or trans lives or the lives of any other oppressed people, or of anybody else for that matter. This genocide is being carried out in our names and with our tax money, and it is therefore our responsibility to speak out against it. I have no faith in my senators or in my representative to ever speak out against this violence because they've all said repeatedly that they won't, no matter how many calls I make to them. However, I can see you, I can meet you. You are all my equals, you're all my peers, you are members of the same community as I am, and I do trust you more, much more than I ever trust the distant politicians in Washington, D.C. Please do the right thing, make history proud, be able to tell your children in the future that you spoke out against the massive loss of civilian life in Gaza. Thank you very much.
Ellen Grady, followed by Claire Grady.
Thank you. Good evening. I spoke 2 weeks ago, and I'm grateful to have a chance to speak again. I feel like so many people have already talked about the numbers and the statistics and all of the horrendousness of what's going on. But I do want to say a couple of things. One is I spoke last time about my grandchildren, and I have the privilege of being with them on Mondays. And yesterday, my 6-year-old grandson, Peter, said to me, he said, "Grandma, Nana," he doesn't call me Grandma, he said, "Nana, and he knew that actually I was just in Washington, D.C. for the rally that happened there. There were 300,000 people in the street. Do people know that? It certainly wasn't reported. 400? Well, anyway, there were a lot of us there, and it was profound. It was amazing, and I could not believe how many people stopped and thanked me for being there. And I felt like, because many of them were Palestinians who spoke to me and asked me questions about what we were doing. We were marching with Bread and Puppet Theater and with these giant peace birds, and I'm digressing, but anyway, but people said, thank you. And I feel like, we're bombing their families, we're killing their families with our bombs, with our money, and they're thanking me for standing in the street with them to say something. And it just had me in tears. But anyway, but what Peter said to me yesterday, he said, "Nana, if I had a 300-foot, I would make a 300-foot sign that says, 'Stop it.'" And I was like, why can it come out of this little kid's mouth? And, I actually didn't explain to him everything that was going on, but he just knows about war somehow or another. They know. But anyway, if you have not read or listened to the hearings on the International Criminal Court of Justice, I really, 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 really want to urge you to listen to, especially South Africa's case, because it's incumbent on us that we hear that and we understand that, because it is our tax dollars that's paying for the genocide that is happening, and it is genocide. And as Beth said, so many of us are wondering, where were we? What was happening in Germany? Where were those people? And I know I have to stop in 1 second, but I just wanted to say, in The Guardian on January 9th, 2024, the headline was, "Emissions from Israelis' war in Gaza have immense effect on climate catastrophe." And I just, if we're not going to be concerned about those kids that are under the rubble, then this is about us. Actually, here we are in December. I could plant tulips and at the end of December in Ithaca, New York. Like, what the heck is going on with our climate? In just
your
the
3
first
minutes is up. If you can make your conclusion.
Okay, I'll just make. In just the first months of the conflict, produced more planet warming gases than 20 climate vulnerable nations in a year. So war is killing us. It's killing the planet, and we have to stop it.
I only have one more blue card left. This is the last call. If anybody wanted to speak in public today, what you should do is go to the back of the room, grab one of these blue cards, fill it out, bring it up here. Other than that, we have one left. Claire Grady.
Hello. I want to thank the legislators, but I also really want to thank everybody that showed up and that has been probably going without sleep with all the meetings in addition to your daily work. I did just come from work, and I'm using a little piece of yellow paper here. Context is really important, and it would take more than 3 minutes to go back, but I'd like to touch on 3 little pieces of context. Yes, Jewish people, Hebrew people, Israelites have been enslaved, have been taken into captivity for thousands of years. It is a big thing. And European Catholics bear a great responsibility for the persecution, the killing, and terrorizing of Jews in the last 100 years, right? And those people are notably silent in this moment when there's just so many ironies here. I want to put that on one piece there. Context. I'm Irish. My grandparents are from Ireland. And I'm slowly learning about this Balfour guy who signed this agreement in 1917, that he was explicitly racist. You can find that online, his statements about Africans in South Africa. And he did not have any love for Jewish people, but he wanted to get rid of the Jewish people problem. And so as a British imperial person, he was in charge of this putting down Irish independence. And so the same British politicians that were sent to Ireland to put down their independence were sent to Palestine after they left Ireland. And the first British military mayor in Jerusalem, in James Storrs, you can look him up, in 1936 said, "We're trying to create a little Jewish Ulster in the Middle East to protect us from hostile Arabism." And what that means is the British imperial project is using Jewish people. Jewish Palestinians had nothing to do with persecuting Jewish people, ever. And they're bearing the brunt. So the next little piece of context, which has been brought up again and again, but we pay for this genocide. That's why it's our work to know what's going on. I wake up, I have heat, water, food. The freezing cold right now. Imagine your family, your children, your grandparents. That's not to mention the bombs and the terror. So it is our responsibility right here, right now. And the Reverend Dr. King is the guide, and that would take longer to repeat. But Beyond Vietnam never gets old. If you have 55 minutes to listen to it, it's on the internet. Thank you.
That concludes our public privilege of the floor. I want to thank everyone for being extremely respectful tonight, given the, the strong feelings that everybody has. So thank you very, very much. The next item up is for municipal officials' privilege of the floor. I don't see anyone in the room, but if there are any elected officials that wanted to address us, now would be the moment. Okay. Next item up then is legislator privilege of the floor. Are there any legislators that would like to speak? Mike Sigler.
Well, I want to start out by congratulating Zach Wynn. Where are you, Zach? So listen, I don't know if a lot of you know about me. I was a journalist for a while, for about 10 years. I went to Columbia Journalism School, got my master's there. And the story you sent us is extraordinarily good. It's just good. Like, I'm reading it. I don't think people in Ithaca know that. So I thank you for reporting on certain stories that I don't think we see reported. I mean, the questions that's raised about Art House are profound, frankly, I think, for this legislature. And that is something we actually can do something about. So I want to thank you for that reporting. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping on some of the commentary that was made. I don't know Senator Schumer. I've met him, I think, twice. I probably disagree with him a lot, but I find him to be a hard worker who goes to every county every year, and he is the majority leader of the Senate. I don't think his position on Israel is because of the money. I can say the same. Mark Molinaro, I know him pretty well now. I've spent some time with him. Again, I don't think his position on Israel is because of the money. It's, I think that a lot of people say that about politicians to dismiss them, and I don't think that's a healthy thing for society. Number two, I want to clean up some things. A lot of people referencing Dr. Martin Luther King, obviously, because of the holiday yesterday, and I would caution people to pull anything out of context, and I'm going to do that right now, actually. I never like when people quote the Bible to make a point, particularly Old Testament. Like they quote Leviticus, and it's like, you might want to go a couple more verses, because I don't think that's going to go the direction you think it's going to go. It's the same thing with Dr. King. I mean, just pulling this up right at Harvard, King supported Israel's right to exist, said so repeatedly. Israel's right to exist as a state and security is incontestable, he once wrote. And this, the whole world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world. He said that a long time ago. I don't think that his view of that would have changed, but I don't know what he would feel today. And I think it's very difficult to put modern, or not even modern, just current events onto people who have not lived for the last 50, 60 years. So just, I would always think that as a cautionary tale. Somebody had mentioned 102 days. 102 days, there have been people held hostage in Gaza. People that at any point could be released. Because taking of hostages is a war crime, just from the outset. That just release the hostages. Do that right now. Do that today. And this idea, people keep calling this a ceasefire. To have a ceasefire, you need both sides to declare the ceasefire. And Hamas has been offered a ceasefire. And this has not been an offer from Israel. This has been an offer from other Muslim countries surrounding this area. You've had Qatar weigh in and say, here are the terms of a ceasefire. Hamas has rejected that. You've had Egypt say, here are the terms of a ceasefire. Hamas has rejected that. So it's not the idea that a ceasefire is even off the table. It's that you have to have two sides to do that dance. And until the hostages are released, perhaps maybe people should start calling this something different. Hamas needs to surrender. It needs to give up. You laugh. I would, people like to quote this too, that you forget history and you're about to repeat it, right? After World War II, and I always assume people know this, but clearly people don't. After World War II, we didn't let Hitler continue to rule Germany. No, he was gone. After World War II, the Emperor of Japan, he wasn't allowed to continue on. No, he was gone as well. And particularly in Germany, the denazification of that country didn't take a day, it didn't take a year, it took decades until that actually happened. So this idea that, well, we're creating more terrorists, I guess you could have made that argument in World War II. You could have said, well, Germany, we're bombing Dresden, we're just creating more Nazis. Yeah, I guess you could make that argument. But this idea of a ceasefire that doesn't include a surrender of Hamas, the Muslim countries that are surrounding this area, that's what they're calling for, that Hamas has got to step down from power. That's what Israel wants as well. Release the hostages, Hamas steps down from power, and then we have a start. But if the U.S. just goes ceasefire without any demands upon Hamas whatsoever, what do people in this room think is going to happen then? Do they not think that Iran, which has been attacking U.S. shipping and overseas shipping in the Red Sea for the past month through a proxy, that doesn't give Iran a blank check to roll in? I guess I don't understand why you would have a ceasefire with demands upon Israel, but not with demands upon Hamas. And that's what I heard called tonight. So, thank you. I give the floor back to the chair.
Veronica Pillar.
Thank you, Dan. As Dan said earlier, nothing about this issue is on the table for tonight, so I don't want to prolong things, but I do just want to thank all the members of the public for coming to speak. And in particular, for the vast majority of you who talked about Palestine, for bringing such really an optimistic and life-affirming message that life matters, peace matters, and that what we say here matters. So I could say, I hear you, I believe you, and I agree with you.
Any other legislators for privilege of the floor? Okay. We can move on with our agenda then. Next up is the chair's report and chair's appointments. I'm just going to pause for a second so as while people leave the room, just to minimize this disruption. Okay, let's go on with our meeting. So next up is chair's report and chair's appointments, and a little talk I want to give. I guess we call it the State of the County. It felt a little funny to call it that, but. So here's the State of the County Address 2024. The state of Tompkins County is excellent, and at the same time, there are plenty of areas that need a lot of attention and need a lot of help. We are doing a lot, and there is a lot more to do. As we look ahead to what might happen in 2024, I see the following as some of the big agenda items. The county needs more office space, as New York State is requiring us to move out of some of our existing space, and as some of the space we currently occupy continues to push past its useful life. Planning for a new super green center of government building will likely involve significant legislator and community engagement in 2024. The county received a grant and has been working with a consultant on developing a strategic operations plan to improve our delivery of services. We will finish the plan and vote on its adoption in 2024. The county is currently planning to take action to make a dent in the number of people experiencing homelessness and sleeping outside. There will be a lot more to say about this as 2024 progresses. The county has more than 40 advisory boards populated with over 300 volunteers. In 2024, all these advisory boards will be required to review and to update their bylaws. We have been without a permanent county attorney for about 6 months. We hope to hire one very soon. Thank you to Holly Mosier for bravely filling the gap. The county will be implementing a rapid medical response project in 2024, which aims to bolster the existing emergency medical services system and to decrease response times countywide. The county has a goal of making broadband internet available to every address in Tompkins County. There are currently more than 1,000 addresses in Tompkins County that are considered unserved. We are waiting for the large amounts of federal and state money that has been set aside for this purpose to be ready to distribute. We won't finish the broadband project in 2024, but hopefully we will get a good start on it. Reimagining Public Safety was a 3-year, multi-point plan which ends at the end of 2024. This year, we will begin to evaluate that initiative and to plan for what comes next. And there is plenty more beyond that. Our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Charlene Holmes, has now been on the job for a few months. Working primarily with the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, she is going to help us achieve more and to work better in these areas. That committee will continue to be chaired by Veronica Pillar. Public safety is a prominent issue in Tompkins County, as it is everywhere. Reimagining public safety is an initiative that came out of the trauma of the George Floyd murder and a follow-up executive order from the governor. It was designed as a 3-year project. We are now entering our 3rd year. That means that evaluation and planning must start soon so that we have a good idea of what comes next in time for our budget season. One of the most promising developments that happened in the area of public safety in 2023 was the rollout of the CARE team, Crisis, Alternative, Response, and Engagement. This program pairs a law enforcement officer from the Sheriff's Department with a mental health professional from County Whole Health to go out on certain kinds of calls. There is one version of this for the Sheriff's Department and one version of this that will roll out soon for the Ithaca Police Department. We will be watching these programs in 2024 to see how they develop. In 2023, we paused our efforts towards planning for what comes next with our county jail. Travis Brooks led a months-long task force to look at all aspects of the jail from the viewpoint of both the county government and from the public, including from those who have direct experience with incarceration. That effort seems to have gotten everyone on the same page, and that is a remarkable feat. Planning for what comes next with the jail will continue in 2024. These projects and more will occupy the attention of the Public Safety Committee, which will continue to be chaired by Rich John. Our budget process is long and extremely deliberative. The budget is a reflection of our values and to a large extent determines the work plan for the year. Tompkins County is fortunate to be in a good financial position. At the same time, our needs are great and everything is expensive. I fully expect that we will continue our robust debate about the role of the fund balance, and chairing the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee this year will be Mike Lane. Our environment, including mitigating and adapting to climate change, is central to so many areas such as health, economics, energy, water, food, recreation, transportation, and much more. We need to act locally to protect Cayuga Lake and to support the diversion of waste as we transition to a more circular economy. Concern for the environment is at the top of the list for many residents of Tompkins County. Ann Corman will continue to chair the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. We currently have 2 committees that deal with county facilities. Just a few months ago, the Downtown Facilities Committee was formed to deal with the multiple pieces of the multiple-year project to solve our space needs. I believe that by the end of the year, we will be far along in moving towards that solution. Continuing to chair that committee will be Randy Brown. The Facilities and Infrastructure Committee is where we spend time with roads and bridges, our county buildings, TCAT, and more. Roads and bridges are critical for everyone, and even more so in our rural areas. Lee Shurtleff will be chairing this committee in 2024. Having one committee that is charged with economic development and all that that entails, and also housing and all that that entails, is a big job. That is the scope of what our Housing and Economic Development Committee does. Homelessness is a prominent issue here in Tompkins County, as it is in many places. In 2024, the county will be rethinking what we can do with our sheltering services to address this growing problem. There are other aspects of homelessness that we will also be working on, alongside other housing and economic issues. Chairing this committee again will be Greg Mezzi. The Health and Human Services Committee interacts with a very large number of employees, programs, and dollars that the county invests in trying to make sure people have what they need to live a decent life, and to catch people who may be falling through the cracks, and to support our young people's health. And chairing this committee in 2024 will be Shauna Black. I have been on the Government Operations Committee since my first day on the legislature, and it's a little sad for me to have to give it up. The Government Operations Committee is charged with most of what you might call the internal workings of county government. But the internal is directly connected to the external, so this committee's scope is broad. Continuing to chair this committee will be Amanda Champion. Thanks to all committee chairs and to all members for stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility. Giving every legislator something they're excited to work on, while at the same time making sure all the slots are filled, is a challenge. A record number of legislators said to me this year, "I will do whatever you need me to do." I am truly and deeply thankful for everyone who said that. Everyone seemed to get something they wanted in terms of committee assignments for the year. The county has many partners in our work, and I want to take just a minute to talk about one of our partners, the City of Ithaca. The county and the city have multiple projects that we collaborate on or hope to collaborate on. The CARE team partnership that I mentioned earlier between the Ithaca Police Department and County Whole Health. A number of reimagining public safety initiatives, including the Community Justice Center. Utilization of money from the opioid settlements. Upcoming negotiations on participating in the Rapid Medical Response Project, and TCAT bus service, along with our partner Cornell University. The Ithaca Common Council now contains many members who are brand new to government. It is not clear which way all these collaborations will go. I am optimistic, though, that we have a good partner in the City of Ithaca. I have spoken with Mayor Cantelmo several times, and he shares my optimism. We both believe that we will have clear channels of communication between the city and the county, and that communication is the key for a good relationship. I also want to take a minute to thank our employees. From the moment I started on the county legislature and began meeting with each department head and their staff, I was struck by how our employees seem mission-driven. There is no county government, there is no 2024 work plan without our employees. I hope our actions will speak louder than our words in expressing our appreciation to our county employees. But for now, you do have these words: thank you, thank you, thank you. And one more extra thank you for the people who helped this legislature function at a high level on a day-to-day basis. Thank you to our legislature clerks, and to county administration and county finance. You are the ones with the really hard jobs. And now I have some appointments to announce. First is Cindy Walters, appointed to the Workforce Development Board. And then to the Ithaca Area Economic Development Board of Directors, we have Ann Corman and Greg Mezzi. To the Ithaca Area Economic Development Executive Committee, Ann Corman and Katie Borgella. To the Chamber of Commerce, Greg Mezzi. To the Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County, Randy Brown. To the Ethics Advisory Board, Rich John as chair. To the Tompkins Center for History and Culture Governance Committee, Amanda Champion. To the Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, Terry Carroll. To the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, Darby Kiley, with Ann Corman as the alternate. To the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, chair. Ann Corman, member, and Travis Brooks, member. And to the Special Negotiating Committees to conduct collective negotiations with employee organizations. For the Corrections Union Negotiating Committee, Shauna Black and Lee Shirtliff. And to the CSEA White Collar Negotiating Committee, Shauna Black and Mike Lane. Next up on our agenda is a report by the County Administrator. Lisa Holmes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You didn't give yourself a break between going into the appointments, but I think you deserve an applause for that wonderful statement tonight.
Thank you, everybody. I believe strongly in our county government, and so that's what I was trying to express in my remarks. Lisa Holmes, you're up.
Thank you, Dan. I have a presentation that I want to share with all of you tonight, but before I jump into that, I have one other item to update the legislature on, and it's somewhat late breaking news that we received this afternoon. Bridget received notice from the state of New York that the grant that we applied for, the local government efficiency grant that we applied for to support the rapid medical response program, we received. A big thank you to Bridget, Mike Steitley, Joe, and the staff at Dewar who helped and who worked on this grant. Even better news, when we were applying for this grant, we were informed in the grant application that it would support 10% of the costs. So we thought we would apply for and hopefully receive funding to purchase the vehicles. We were informed that we received 90% instead of 10% of what we applied for, about $630,000. And through this process, because Bridget contacted the state thinking there was a typo somewhere. There was a typo, and she rooted out the typo in the state's application materials. We were the first ones to catch it, that the application materials should have said 90% go to the local, there's, we were to get 90% with a 10% local share. So we like this math a whole lot better. And we're notified so early on in the year, we can actually, we have this knowledge going forward. So very pleased.
Don't understand. 90% with a 10% local share. What does that mean?
So of the projected cost to run the program was $699,000. We received approximately $630,000. So.
And the 10% is what? Just what we have to put into it?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure. And this is one of the two grants, assuming that these units in the state talk to one another, and the shared services grant, which we applied for, we'll have to get some more information on you there, but for you about the status of that grant. But this is indeed good news for us. So I'm going to take a minute and share my screen.
Rich, did you want to jump in?
I did have a question. I thought we weren't going to hear about that grant until perhaps mid-year, so this is well ahead of schedule.
Right. Well, we submitted our shared services plan at the end of 2023, and that's the one that we thought we were going to get the bigger amount, and we'd have to wait until midway through the year. We submitted this local government efficiency grant a few months prior to that, probably 4 to 6 months prior to that. So, yeah. Okay. Once again. Went through this recently.
Might just want to close and reopen the file. Sometimes Acrobat doesn't read them.
Okay. My Zoom crashed. Talk amongst yourselves.
Lisa, do you want me to jump to some of the other reports while you're
If you
figuring?
could,
Absolutely,
Dan,
of course,
thank you.
yeah. County Attorney's report.
I don't really have much to report that's different from last time. Continue to be busy. And I mean, the one thing, I guess, if anybody knows anyone that might be interested in a paralegal aid position, we're not getting any applicants. I did talk with Larry earlier today, and he was going to put something together to blast on LinkedIn. So that's really one of our biggest concerns right now is getting some applicants. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Holly? Okay, next up, Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett.
Good evening. I have a couple of updates. The first being, as of today, we have 32 properties in the foreclosure process, down from 68 at the beginning of October. We are busy working on year-end and gathering the data for our official statement for our upcoming bans. And also, starting January 29th, we'll start our year-end audit for the task and the IDA. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Lori? Okay, well, thank you, Lori. I'm going to go on to the next agenda item. I think we're still working over there. Are there any resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda? I think resolution G was going to be pulled. Sorry, Randy, we went out of order. I think it's yours. Sorry about that.
Where are we now?
Yeah, I think we're up to resolutions being added or withdrawn from the agenda. I think maybe resolution G
Yes. Yes.
to be withdrawn. Very good, thank you. Hey, Lisa, shall I continue on the agenda? It's all good. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. We are up to the consent agenda. Resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. I have one appointment, Sandy List, to the Tompkins County Historical Commission. Then Resolution A, resolution urging support for Empire State Community College Workforce Guarantee, ID number 12150. Resolution B, budget adjustment, Department of Planning and Sustainability, Community Housing Development Fund Awards, ID 12142. Resolution C, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 09-47, Green Building Construction and Renovation Policy, ID number 12099. And then Resolution D, authorization for the county administrator to enter into a cyber information sharing and collaboration agreement with New York State Information Technology Services and the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, ID 12130. Is there somebody that would like to move the consent agenda? Veronica Pillar, seconded by Deborah Dawson. Okay, let's have a vote.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
13 ayes, consent agenda passes.
Thank you. Still working on it?
For whatever reason, Zoom is not cooperating with my computer tonight, so Dominic and I are going to tag team with his computer.
Okay, so is this the moment? You gonna do it now, or do you want me to keep going?
About 2 minutes. It might take me about 2 minutes. So
Sure,
if you have
no
2
problem.
minutes worth of things.
Sorry to put the pressure on you. Okay, we'll start on standing and special committees. First up is Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Captain Dan. I would like to offer Resolution E, a resolution to establish reserve funds, ID 12149, and I move it.
Seconded by Mike Lane. Discussion.
I will let Lori take the lead on this discussion. I will just say that this is to fund the reserve funds in accordance with a policy that this legislature adopted last year.
Yes, that's exactly what this is, to fund the reserves based on the policy that was adopted. We did previously fund the debt service reserve, and that you'll see in the 6th whereas of $5,720,000. And some of this also includes some cleanup of the accounts. So not only are we funding the reserves that need to be funded, but also some of them that had been depleted or in the wrong accounts. We're correcting them and getting them combined and streamlined and reconciled to the cash accounts also. So a lot of things happening on this resolution.
Questions or comments? Randy Brown.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So the unassigned fund balance, $11 million to capital reserve, is that for constructing new buildings, or is that just?
It's for any capital expense.
So it's just whatever we decide to do, okay. In self-insurance, I understand. The tax stabilization, was that money that we put aside for debt? Explain that one to me.
No, debt service was a separate reserve fund that we passed as part of the budget.
So explain tax stabilization.
The tax stabilization, I'm going to defer to Lori.
Yeah, if you remember, probably back in, I'd say June, probably, DSS had some funding that was returned to them from the state. And at that time, a resolution was passed to set that money aside in a reserve, but we didn't have a reserve established or a policy set up. So at that time, we put it in the deferred revenue. And so that's what I'm doing here, taking it out of that deferred revenue and putting it in the reserve that was designated a few months back.
I remember that now, thank you. Yep.
So what would that be used for, Lori? What could that be used for?
So that could be used for things, particularly for DSS, that if there's like a mandated program or expense that you didn't budget for, you could use that money for this. So things that are unusual in nature that would affect DSS.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
No.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
No.
11 ayes, 2 noes, motion passes.
Okay, at our meeting this last Monday, since the composition of the committee is not going to change very much, we started to talk about our goals for next year. I won't discuss those until we've had the opportunity to agree to them under the leadership of Mike Lane. I just want to thank the committee members and all of the legislature. It's been a real privilege to chair this committee for the last 3 years, and despite the privileged nature of that position, I'm happy to turn it over to Mr. Lane.
Thank you for doing it. That's one of our biggest committee jobs. There's lots of extra meetings. Thank you.
Yeah, but now there's a bus company.
Okay, any questions or comments for Deborah and the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee? Okay, thank you. Okay, we are back to our regularly scheduled program. We were now going to hear the administrator's report, and then we'll probably take a break after we're all done with that.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for your patience, everyone. My computer is just completely frozen, so Always great to have backup. So I'm pleased once again to have the opportunity to update the legislature and the public of the accomplishments of our county departments in 2023, at the start of a new year. And this presentation is just really going to scratch the surface of the day-to-day work of our county staff and what our offices do for the community. We'll be sure to distribute this presentation for your reference. And again, I want to thank Dominic for his help in compiling this presentation together with our departments and what they have shared with us. This year, I'm going to start the presentation off with county administration, as our department initiated many of the projects and collaborated in the important work with our departments as well as with the legislature. So we have a few more slides at the outset to kick us off. And 2023 felt like the busiest year yet in county administration. Our staff was involved in leading the organizational strategic planning efforts together with a steering committee, continuing to administer and report on the Community Recovery Fund grants and ARPA funds, ushering the downtown facilities plan forward, and developing the 2024 county budget and implementing new budget software. Among other efforts, the Community Justice Center launched 2 community resource hubs in Groton and Enfield. We negotiated a successful bargaining agreement with Blue Collar, implementing the results of the compensation analysis to ensure that our salaries remain competitive. We restructured the functions of transportation planning, weights and measures, and workforce development to promote more organizational efficiency. And we convened the Shared Services Panel and submitted the EMS Rapid Response Pilot Program to the state for grant funding, written before today's announcement. Here's a bird's eye view of the old jail. In this next slide, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, or JEDI team was active again in 2023, and an equity exchange newsletter was launched. We updated 15 policies in the Administrative Policy Manual in 2023. We implemented enhanced security measures at the Human Services Building to improve safety for all. And staff and partners were convened to plan for emergency shelter bed expansion. We also convened and briefed community partners to prepare for the potential arrival of asylum seekers. We worked with a grant consultant to research available grants and strengthen the county's grant administration function, and that work continues. We also convened a county task force to negotiate a 5-year agreement with IAED for continued economic development services in the county, led a team to analyze and restructure solid waste fees for colleges and educational institutions to ensure equity in the fee structure. We conducted performance evaluations of all department heads in 2023 and ensured a performance appraisal process for all county employees in 2023. We engaged in 11 executive level searches, put together a comprehensive county services mailer and mailed it to all county residents, and completed the first phase of the legislature streaming upgrades with more to come. So now going on to the Health and Human Services departments. Starting with the Office for the Aging. COFA reached out even more into the community in 2023 through home visits, community outreach events, and more newsletter subscribers. COFA's Home Health Aid provided home care to 25 previously unserved individuals, assisting them to live at home independently. COFA continued coordinating and funding vital services such as home-delivered meals, in-home case management, as well as benefits counseling and other supports. They also continue to innovate through the age-friendly livable communities and other initiatives in partnership with Cornell and others. The Office of Human Rights partnered with Cornell Just Futures on a $25,000 grant to address migration, dispossession, and racism. OHR partnered with a local Your Voice, Your Vote civic engagement coalition to hold its first annual Democracy Fest last summer. The department sponsored multiple programs throughout the year illuminating various facets of human rights, including Dr. King's anti-poverty legacy, reproductive freedom, human rights and climate change, the rise in hate crimes toward Asian Americans, fair housing and aging, among others. Our Department of Social Services met or exceeded the goals set by New York State for child welfare. Over half of Tompkins County's foster children are in kinship care, exceeding the state's 30% target. And only 10% of foster children are in congregate care, and that meets the state's target of under 12%. Between 80 and 88% of families assisted through homeless programs at DSS entered permanent housing in 2023. DSS engaged its staff in training to continually improve customer service, and over 170 staff were trained in the areas of disability, implicit bias, racial equity, gender-based violence, and LGBTQ cultural awareness. In 2023, Whole Health completed its departmental merger and rebranding to better address the root causes of health disparities and integrate physical, mental, and environmental health. They launched the Mental Health Law Enforcement Co-Response Care Team in partnership with the Sheriff's Department. Whole Health facilitated the distribution of $1.5 million in opioid settlement funds with the Legislature and the Community Services Board. In our County Youth Services, 2023 saw the establishment of the Newfield Youth Commission with advocacy for increased support from the town of Newfield in the 2024 budget. Youth Services assessed and reorganized its departmental staffing, and its popular community training series was reinstated after several years hiatus due to COVID. The Open Doors Runaway and Homeless Youth Program secured its operating certificate from OCFS to support our homeless youth. On to Veteran Services, the department doubled in size in 2023 from 1 to 2 and hosted several departmental events, including a County Veterans Resource Fair and the launch of the Cornell Law School's Veteran Law Clinic. The department also increased in reach in the community by presenting at several organizations and events. On to our public safety departments. The Department of Emergency Response engaged over 250 residents and 26 agencies through public events and trainings in 2023. They presented inaugural County EMS and Fire Service awards to community partners for their accomplishments. Likewise, Dewar staff were recognized and celebrated with honors by partnering organizations. Work on the Backup Dispatch Center project progressed after a variance was granted by the town of Ithaca, and a critical incident stress management team and peer support group was created for staff to support one another in the critical and very challenging work that they do every day. Our district attorney's office successfully prosecuted numerous felony jury trials in county court in 2023. The department published a data dashboard on its website. Our DA participated in multiple Reimagining Public Safety working groups and continues to prioritize alternatives to incarceration through LEAD and the various treatment courts with the goal of using incarceration as the last resort. In 2023, the Probation Department received a GiveX grant to address gun-involved violence in the county. They implemented the use of radios to enhance communication and safety of probation officers, and they completed a 12-month community service pilot project, which resulted in a 300% increase in community service engagement over previous years. In 2023, the Sheriff's Office implemented the CARE co-response team in partnership with Whole Health. They achieved reaccreditation for the Corrections Division and took steps towards law enforcement accreditation, with the assessment anticipated this year. They obtained GIVE funds to address gun-involved violence in the community, and through the grant implemented a task force and installed flock safety equipment. They also implemented the SHIELD team, convening key community stakeholders to prevent targeted violence and acts of domestic terrorism. In 2023, the Assigned Counsel program implemented new procedures to draw down 18B reimbursements from New York State. The increase in reimbursement enabled the department to recruit and add new attorneys to the Assigned Counsel panel, improving access to representation for clients. Now on to our Facilities and Infrastructure Committee departments. In 2023, our Highway Department resurfaced 20 miles and preserved over 30 miles of county roadways. They installed 1,400 feet of guide rail and over 1,600 feet of culvert pipe and completed construction on 5 precast concrete culverts. In 2023, they brought the weights and measures function under the Highway Department and successfully hired a new director. Our airport operations staff are fully trained and completed a successful Part 139 FAA safety inspection. The airport now has a marketing position on staff. They received grant funds in 2023 to help gain new and expanded air service, and they're working to explore additional non-airline revenue. And they finalized contracts with current and potential airlines, the culmination of several years' work. In 2023, our facilities department completed the geothermal conversion at the Bostwick Road facility. They completed major HVAC upgrades at the library, replaced over 50 heat pumps with variable refrigerant flow units at the mental health building, and got the public safety building improvements underway. The deconstruction of the dental building was completed, and the initial planning is underway for the Center of Government building. Now on to Planning, Development, and Economic and Environmental Quality Committee. In 2023, the Department of Planning and Sustainability coordinated a community outreach campaign for the updated FEMA flood maps. They took on the transportation planning function from DSS, under which the concerns of the FTA's triennial review of local transit operations were successfully addressed. They completed the expanding broadband access plan, which identified areas where businesses and households lack broadband access. They achieved the highest distinction in the Climate Smart Communities recertification process, and they dispersed nearly $400,000 through the Community Housing Development Fund, supporting construction of 48 affordable housing units. In 2023, our Recycling Materials Management Department engaged local organizations about the reusable bag program and distributed over 2,800 bags to the community. They completed a number of important maintenance projects to the facility. They delivered the draft 10-year waste reduction and recycling plan for public comment and review. And they engaged in a process to update the structure of the solid waste annual fee to make it more equitable for all. Under Housing and Economic Development, in 2023, the restructure of the new Workforce Development Department was completed, combining the former Workforce Development Board and Office of Employment and Training. The Summer Youth Employment Program served 113 participants at 44 sites. The Career Center served employment supports to job seekers, including targeted supports to individuals with disabilities, youth, as well as supports to businesses. Strategic partnerships were developed or enhanced with community partners. And on to Budget, Capital, and Personnel. In 2023, the Department of Human Resources processed 277 new hires, as well as the hiring of 150 summer youth participants and election workers. They reviewed over 5,200 employment applications and conducted 118 civil service exams. They performed 461 recruitment efforts and 12 executive level searches, and countywide training funds provided 90 employees with career development opportunities in 2023. In 2023 in finance, in the Treasury unit, they reached out to the owners of 77 parcels in foreclosure, redeeming 70 parcels and processing 7 that went to public auction. The accounts payable and payroll unit issued over 30,000 payments. Finance worked with administration to update several significant policies to ensure the county's fiscal health and compliance. The finance team hosted and oversaw the external audit team, which issued the county an unqualified audit for 2022. And lastly, the departments that fall under government operations. In 2023, our Board of Elections administered 3 countywide elections, 5 village elections, and worked with 5 school districts to help them run their elections. They onboarded and trained over 100 new poll workers, and they contracted with Clear Ballot to provide new voting machines for the 2024 elections. Excuse me. Our County Assessment Department completed its 24th consecutive year of maintaining a uniform percentage of market value for all properties on the assessment roll. The 2023 Annual Equity Maintenance Program resulted in over 26,000 changes in assessment, with only 5.6% of those changes contested. In 2023, the total assessed value rose by $886 million in Tompkins County. In 2023, the county's Information Technology Services Department hosted a cyber readiness workshop for the county and local municipal leaders and deployed new cybersecurity practices for all employees. ITS upgraded critical infrastructure to support all county departments, improving performance and reliability. They deployed over 200 devices utilizing new centralized procurement processes. And the GIS team completed redistricting and 2023 local election maps, among other projects. In 2023, our county clerk continued the e-recording of land records and e-filing of court records. They assisted customers with Real ID or enhanced licenses. They collected over $18.7 million in revenue for New York State, the county, and towns, and notably customers consistently rate our DMV with approval ratings between 95 and 100%. Our county attorney's office handled over 60 family court cases and successfully responded to 2 appeals and processed 292 FOIL requests, all with half the staff of prior years. They reorganized their office space for greater efficiency. And the clerk of the legislature's office made the following happen in 2023: 150 public meetings, 11 public hearings, over 300 resolutions, 4 local laws, and 125 advisory board appointments. Staff welcomed and onboarded 1 new legislator and a new deputy clerk. They updated the advisory board policy and streamlined the advisory board appointment process and began the transition to new meeting management software. And last but certainly not least, in 2023, our county legislature continued to oversee the Community Recovery Fund, which allocated over $6 million to community organization. You passed a 2024 county budget amidst EFMAP challenges, and at the same time were able to champion the development of the EMS Rapid Response Program, something that has the potential to reduce response times and save lives, among other critical programs. In 2023, the legislature set program priorities and granted over $700,000 in opioid settlement funds to community organizations for life-saving support and preventative programs. The Downtown Facilities Committee was created to advance the Center of Government Development. In 2023, the county maintained its AA1 credit rating with Moody's, and the fiscal decisions made by the legislature around fiscal investment fund balance and the establishment of reserves will ensure fiscal health in the future. So all of these achievements were made possible through the hard work and collaboration between and among departments with our community and municipal partners and under the policy direction of the legislature. So a big thank you to our legislators, thank you to our county staff for another year of dedicated work in service to our community. Thank you for the time.
Thank you to our county.
And it's just awesome to hear the scope of what we do, what we try to do, what we've accomplished, what we still have left to go. You know, that's an organization I would like to work for. Questions or comments for Lisa? Deborah.
I do have a question. Since we're getting so much more money from that state grant, that as I recall, we had budgeted as part of our budget process, will the money that we budgeted that we don't use go back into fund balance?
So half of the money, I have to go back and look. Half of the money was put in ongoing funds, I believe,
right,
to support the ongoing, and the other was in contingency fund. So yes, I do believe that half of it would go into fund balance.
I'm sure that'll make some of us very happy.
Other questions or comments? Okay, before we take a break, I just want to...
He's got a hand.
Oh, thank you. Ann, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. For Lisa, going back to the rapid medical response, do you know, are there any grants for subsequent years for the program, or just for the initial year?
The 2 that we applied to were only for the initial year, not for ongoing costs. I do know that that in New York State, and, through Governor Hochul's state of the state, and also through NISAC, this is an issue that is coming to the fore. So we're going to keep our eye out for other potential opportunities for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, before we take our break, I just want to remind everybody that we now have our committee assignments for the year. Those new committee configurations will start February 1st. And it's our job starting tonight to begin to try to schedule all those committees in. So you can take time during the break to do that. You can take time at the end of the meeting. Katrina has distributed or will distribute. I've distributed. Do you want to say something about it?
I've distributed calendars for everybody. And grayed out were last year's committee meetings. But once everybody decides on their date and time, they can come and let me know, and I'll create one for 2024.
We will accomplish that task as quickly as we can. Sometimes we're able to do it, in one day. Sometimes it takes a couple of days of follow-up emails and that kind of thing. So we will be working on that over the next couple of days. Deborah.
Yeah, thank you. I assume that we can just indicate on this schedule if continuing in that time frame works for us, but the Downtown Facilities Committee is not on here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll just mention, you probably all know this, but just because your committee wants to continue at that time, there's the other, there's the big jigsaw puzzle, so everything's a little tentative for a couple more days. Anything else before we take a break? Okay, let us take a 13-minute break. That'll put us at, well, I'm rounding off, 7:55. So we had just, oh, sorry, I forgot that part. Thank you. Okay, we had just started on the standing and special committees. If it's okay with everyone, I'd like to skip down to the Housing and Economic Development Committee. Do that one next, then we'll go back in order. So, sorry, Greg, I should have. Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. I have two resolutions on the agenda tonight. If you just give me a moment to catch back up here. The first one, I and J are tied together. The first one is the resolution I making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to resolution number XXX of 2024, award of 2023 Strategic Tourism Implementation Grants, ID number 12144, and I would move that.
Is there a second? Veronica Pillar seconds.
This is a procedural resolution in making the determination of environmental significance. So if there's any questions, I would entertain those.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and have a vote then.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Indy Brown,
Yes.
Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
13 ayes, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next one is Resolution J, award of 2023 Strategic Tourism Implementation Grants, Doc ID 12123, and I would go ahead and move that.
Travis Brooks seconds.
This is the Strategic Tourism Implementation Grants. As everybody should be aware of, that this is a rolling grant application that is administered through the Strategic Tourism Planning Board and our planning department, supported by Nick Hemholt. There are three awards that are listed here. The Tompkins County Chamber Foundation for wayfinding and interpretive signage plan implementation. The Department of Planning and Sustainability for ithacatrails.org, guiding a new generation of explorers to outdoor adventures. And one that came to us in our budget and OTR process, which we referred to this grant program, which was successful in obtaining it, the Greater Ithaca Activity Center Hospitality and Employment Training Program. There's a memo attached from our planning department, and happy to entertain any questions.
Questions or comments on this resolution? Randy.
Yes, I have a question on the first one for the wayfinding. Is that like a signage, actually putting signs up, or just trying to figure out?
Yeah, so this is a project that's better part of 10 years that's been going on in Tompkins County, trying to pull together the funding. This is about signage, wayfinding, placemaking. It's sort of a multifaceted approach to better brand and create some cohesion between our different communities and tourism attractions and places of significance, so that residents, new residents, and visitors can all better navigate our cities and our city and our towns. So this is definitely a multi-year project that's well into the planning and replanning. There was a report originally done in 2014 about this, and it's taken a while with the pandemic. There was some funds previously set aside in the STPB budget, which were then utilized during the pandemic. Those have since been refilled. This is just a piece of this funding, but it is a large piece that will allow the Chamber Foundation to go out and seek additional funders, either at the state and federal level or from some of our other community partners, other cities and municipalities across Tompkins County.
Thank you. Well,
Other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to take a turn. I've been trying to decide what I wanted to do about this resolution, so I'm going to vote yes for it. However, the reason I had a lot of thoughts about it was because I do not support the wayfinding initiative. I do not think that what Tompkins County needs is more signs. $330,000 is a lot of money, and I'm thinking about a number of our not-for-profit arts and cultural organizations that have publicly talked about the financial straits they're in, and I know there's other ones that are privately also in real trouble. And so I would much rather see money used to support those kinds of institutions. So I am going to vote yes, but I would like the record to show that despite voting yes, that I don't support the wayfinding initiative, and hoping the minutes will reflect that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mike Lane.
Dan, I understand your concern here, but I do feel that this program that it's been in the works for so many years, and we're finally able to move it forward some with the support of the tourism hotel tax money, makes sense at this point, in this juncture, in our efforts to improve tourism in Tompkins County.
Any other questions or comments? Rich.
Yeah, I will support this resolution with the wayfinding for the same reasons Mike just stated. And I would note that the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency has committed funding to this as well.
Deborah Dawson.
Thank you. I was wondering if we had a final figure and how much this project is going to cost when it's all said and done.
So I don't know exactly the details of a final figure. I know that it is in process in the planning stage to get to a final figure. I know the figure back in 2014 was much higher than $330,000. And
probably hasn't gotten cheaper.
The plan has been retooled and I'll say right-sized, to use a consulting term, to make sure that it fits, one, within the means, but also within the greatest need first, and expanding from there in multiple phases. I know that there is an additional, I believe, $250,000 that's been set aside for this. So it is a large project. But if you think about every time we change a road sign or do those type of things, those take, that takes time. It takes, the biggest drain really is the people to install those correctly and permanently. One of the things I've committed to Dan to do is either in February or March, depending on the schedule of the Chamber Foundation, invite them to come into HED and give us a real comprehensive update on this, and then use that committee to keep tabs on this project moving forward at each stage of the process. And I don't want to speak for Jennifer Tavares, the president of the chamber, who's here today, but I know she's committed to follow that up and work through HED as a conduit to continue to provide information, one, to the public, and then two, to the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
I recall that originally the price tag was $2 million on this project.
Holy cow.
Yes, in 2014. Jennifer, do you want to come up? You're welcome to.
Greg, you're doing a great job. So the original estimated budget was 1.2. I think maybe the 2 is probably, that's where the 2 came from. The current effort is to, yes, right size and reevaluate, but we all know that supplies cost, materials cost, labor cost from 10 years ago, as estimated in that original budget, to today could look really different. That's a big part of the reason why the overall program needs to be right-sized, so there will be less total waypoints, less total signs, and we're also working with some different planning and architecture folks, and also some different potential suppliers to see how we can value engineer, if you will, everyone's favorite words for a project like this, to make sure that we get the most bang for the buck, if you will, the most signs for the amount of investment, and continue to, depending on how the budget comes out, the initial budget projection, that will influence the amount of additional fundraising and also the phasing of the project.
We also, though, foresee the ability with the funds that are currently or could potentially currently be allocated, that we would be able to start some of the project, if not all of it, correct?
I'm very hopeful that regardless of how many total funds are needed, that we will get to permitting this year. We may not get signs in the ground depending on the length of time from total reconfiguration of the project to permitting, but because DOT can take, I think, no matter what, almost 6 months to get through some of those processes. But we will, I think, get to permitting, and so if not late this year, by early 2025, or as soon as we can start installing signs, you'll start seeing signs go out. We, of course, have, to your point, a lot of stakeholders and a lot of partners that were at the table before that we are inviting back to the table, and a lot of municipalities and groups like TCOG, et cetera, that we are planning to come back to when we have the full scope redefined.
Ann Corman.
Thank you. I just wanted to add my 2 cents that I think the wayfinding signs help organizations in the way that it helps people find those organizations, and it helps organizations and institutions, and it helps folks not just get there, but know that they're here, whether it's people locally or people traveling. So I am really in favor of this, and I'm a big, I have GPS in my car. I had it for years, and I use it a lot, but it's totally different to when you see signs. You have to actually look for something on GPS. So I think this will help a lot. And also there's a lot of people who don't use GPS or maps or some other way to find things. So, and plus as people are driving or walking, so they're getting off of their phone and they can actually just walk and interact with people and be safer. So I'm very supportive of this. I've seen it happy to see it.
Yeah, so the gateway signs throughout all the communities, many of them have installed their own, like, welcome to Newfield or welcome to this community type signage. And so I don't think that the goal with this plan will be to come and say, we're going to slap another sign up anyway. If they have a beautiful new sign that they've invested in, then that welcomes people to Newfield, I think that's a sign maybe we don't have to buy, right? But I think a lot of smaller municipalities might not have all those gateway signs or all those welcome signs yet, and if they want to participate in this or they want these signs, then that's the level of detail that we're going through right now. And one final comment, sorry, while I have the mic, apologize, is the whole project is not just additive of signs. There is analysis of existing signage, replacement of existing signs, and what total signage is needed in all the places where there will be signs. So it's not just all new signs in addition to everything you see on the road right now. Many of these will replace existing signs or the old wayfinding signs that are up around the county and the old gateway signs, for example. So some signs will come down and be replaced with new.
Any other comments, questions on Resolution J? Ready for a vote then?
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion. Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Mike Ziegler.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Shauna got kicked out of the Zoom, it looks like.
And her hand's raised. Uh-oh.
Back.
Shauna, are you here?
Yeah, I got kicked out. I vote yes on this.
Thank you. Dan Klein.
Yes.
13 ayes, motion passes.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we're going to go back in time a little bit and continue on the agenda. Workforce, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee will be meeting next Wednesday, January 24th at 3 p.m. And we will be talking about 2024 goals, mostly. This is still with the old membership, but our membership's only changing by one person who's going to be there. We'll also be collectively looking at the diversity and inclusion policy, not to edit it, but to try to, we've noticed that this committee has mentioned a lot in it, and we're not all necessarily in compliance with it. So we're going to educate ourselves.
Questions or comments about the Workforce, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee? Okay, thank you. Next up is Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. The Public Safety Committee will be meeting this Thursday at 3 o'clock, the 18th, and I anticipate we will be having discussion about beginning discussion about our goals for 2024, and we're also going to get a report on status of the Rapid Medical Response Program that we were talking about this evening. The only other thing I'd mention is our jail numbers are at 62 with 0 board outs.
Questions or comments for the Public Safety Committee? All right, thank you. Next up, Downtown Facilities Special Committee, Randy Brown.
Yes, we met, thank you. We met on January 9th, and we had a good meeting, covered a lot of ground. We're going to be creating, or the clerks will be creating a web page on the Tompkins County website focused on all the information related to the downtown project, chronological and all the information. We're gathering a lot of that. We want to make it as publicly available as possible. One of the things we got notified of through administration is that the New York court system said that keeping the grand jury in the current courthouse was acceptable to them, so that was good news. And we also went over deconstruction and talked about that and how people feel about it. And obviously we want to do that correctly, but we've got to do it with cost in mind for that, for the buildings we will deconstruct. And our next meeting will be, the committee looks pretty much the same with maybe one addition and we're going to try to keep our meetings the second Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. And I do have a resolution.
First of all, questions or comments on Randy's report? Okay, please go ahead with your resolution.
Okay, this is the resolution ID 12148. It's accepting the Monroe balancing test on 300 and 308 North Tioga Street in the city of Ithaca, and I move that.
Mike Lane seconds. Randy, do you want to say something about this one?
The Monroe balancing test is an analysis that was done primarily by our Planning and Sustainability Department, reviewed all those issues and had an attorney reviewed as well. Basically, it's saying that the buildings at 300 and 308 North Tioga Street are no longer needed for the current use that they have, and that we can move forward and deconstruct them.
Questions or comments on this resolution? Okay, let's have a vote.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
13 ayes. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, next up is Health and Human Services Committee. Health and Human Services Committee will meet tomorrow, January 17th, 2 o'clock. We're going to have Dr. William Claypack, the County Medical Director, who will be giving a presentation on supervised consumption facilities. Should be interesting. Any questions or comments? Okay. Moving on, in Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Do you not have a resolution?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to tell me too? Okay, thank you. It's good, keep me in line. Yes, Resolution H, appropriation from the 2024 Contingent Fund, Mental Health Association, Whole Health Department. Is there a second? Travis seconds. Discussion. Okay, let's have a vote.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion? Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
13 ayes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Now on to Facilities Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Yes, sir. We will be meeting again this Thursday, January 18th at 9 o'clock a.m. We don't have too heavy an agenda, but we'll be probably talking about things like goals and other things. It'll be my last meeting to chair. Lee Shurtleff will be taking over as chair. I particularly want to thank Randy Brown for his efforts as vice chair during the past year. I think we've accomplished a lot of things that are pretty important to our county, from airport to highways to green initiatives to TCAT and other things. So thank you to all the members of the committee. That includes Lee and Deborah and Greg. Besides Randy, we've had a great committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Mike? Okay, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you. Our next meeting will likely be at the same date and time as we have been meeting, which is the second Thursday. I will confirm that with Katrina after this meeting. The agenda is not set, but I think it's going to be a full one, so come prepared. And I sent you all an email earlier today that I wanted to just talk about briefly. There was a lot of emails today. You may have missed it. We had a long discussion with Jay Franklin in assessment last month and the previous month, and he had brought forward to us a resolution to consider moving to a triennial assessment. And no, it is not required by law to do that, to do a full 100% assessment. But our county has always believed in, 100% assessment every year is the most equitable way of distributing our, taxes. The problem with that is that the market is a bit out of control and rising rapidly in the past couple of years and causing a lot of work for the assessment department, and they cannot keep up is part of one of the issues. So after numerous discussions, the committee felt like it was not in the best interest of the county to move to a triennial assessment, which, if you don't know what that is, I'm not sure I can explain it very well, other than instead of assessing every year, it's a 3-year assessment at a percentage of the actual assessment of your house. So it's not necessarily the most fair way of distributing the taxes. So, all that said, the committee asked Jay to come back next month with a resolution that would talk about giving him more staff. Essentially, he said that he would need 3 more staff people to be able to continue with 100% assessment. So I know that has implications. That's a whole nother conversation about adding staff when it's not in budget time. But we do need to keep having this conversation because it sounds to be a pretty dire situation in the department. So that's a very long explanation. We will be talking about it again at the meeting. Please come. Please watch the last 2 meetings. We've had very long conversations with Jay the past 2 months. And it is something that we all need to understand and be able to, talk about and vote on, because it's not just the GO committee that should be making this decision. So I'm happy to try to answer questions, but I'll leave it there.
Questions for Amanda? Rich.
Oh, well stated. The only thing I'd add is that if we did go to a triennial system, it sounds like we would need that kind of head count every 3rd year.
Right.
So that you wouldn't avoid having to do that. It was just, you'd have to.
It's sort of delayed, yeah.
You'd either have people on the shelf somewhere not doing very much for 2 years, or every 3rd year you'd have to ramp up and then try to figure out how to ramp down.
I have Randy, then Greg.
I did watch both those meetings and read the documents that Jay provided. And I do understand the difference between tax levy and tax rate. I know that was a big issue for Jay to understand that. The biggest complaint I get for people in assessments is not that their assessment went up, is that it went up 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. And I don't see the value in that. I understand how it works. And we're going to have to hire 3 new employees, additional employees to manage this. I, as an operations person, I just don't understand the value of doing it. Why don't you, could you have a policy that says that you won't, no matter what, you won't be reassessed 2 years in a row? Or I mean, so that, I mean, and for some people, it's big money. I had $100,000, this one lady, fixed income. She has a nice big house, and her husband passed away, and that's a big number, for especially school taxes. So it does impact people, and how much longer can she stay in her house? So that's just an issue. And it affects elderly people, I think, really, really difficultly. So I don't understand why you couldn't just say, we're going to assess Newfield every second year, every third year, and you go around, and you know every third year you're going to get reassessed someplace, and you could manage your people a lot better, and it'd be an easier process. People would know it's coming. They know this is your year, Newfield. You're going to get hit, or Enfield, or whoever. So I understand his position. I just think there's an easier way to do it, and I know at one time the county actually received funding for doing this process every year, and that expired, I guess, years ago. So there's no financial benefit for us to, no grants that come with doing this, is there? That I'm aware of.
Amanda, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is triennial assessment. And you either do 100% assessment or you don't. And so
You do 100% every year.
Yeah.
Every third year, you could say.
Right. So triennial assessment would be every third year. The problem with that, and again, I'm not an assessment guru, but after 6 years, I have learned a thing or two. It just means it actually makes the numbers less transparent. So on your tax bill, it will say, you know, your assessment is this much, but it's actually it's a percentage of that. So it becomes much more convoluted, and yes, places would only be assessed every couple of years, but then come that third year, it would catch up and all the assessments would be done, and then you would get that, you know, raised at that point anyway. So it's a delay, basically. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Greg.
To Rich's comment, just to see clarity, it doesn't mean that there's 2 years of doing nothing, and then on the third year, 26,000 reassessments happen, and we grow the tax base by 880 million or whatever it was. Wouldn't it be like we take these 4 sections this year, and then these 4 sections, and then these 4 sections?
We can't do that.
We asked that question.
Got it, okay. So you have to do them all in one swoop, but that's only if you want to stay at 100%. If you lowered that percentage, could you rotate them through? That you can't rotate through it all. It's all or nothing. So how do other counties manage this, or other municipalities manage this?
They don't. As Jay has said,
Which is their choice to do that.
There's some counties that have not had a reassessment since the Civil War. And I've had experience as well in a county that has not been reassessed since 1950. And houses, you know, that here would cost $300,000 or $12,000. They're assessed at $12,000.
But to your earlier comment, we're not required to assess at 100% on an annual basis. So we could have not assessed since the Civil War?
Yes.
Okay, it's not against the law?
Right.
Okay.
Definitely we'll continue this conversation. I really urge you to go to GO and ask Jay directly, because it's...
Yeah, he's better than me.
Not just you, I mean, it's really hard to understand this stuff. I have Deborah, then Ann.
Well, if Jay's going to explain it, I'll let Jay explain it. I just, you know, I understood where Greg was coming from. It would be easy if we could do a third, a third, a third. But apparently, whatever percentage you choose to assess at, whatever percentage of fair market value you choose to assess at, everybody has to be assessed at that percentage all the time. If I only do a third of the county this year, that means that the other 2/3 may not be assessed this year at 100% or whatever percent we choose. And the state doesn't allow that, as I understand it.
I'm very excited to be on GEO this next year, so thank you for the opportunity, Dan. The question I do have, though, does that mean that currently every single parcel in Tompkins County is assessed at 100%?
Yes.
It is.
And that's a choice we make.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look at a parcel comparison if somebody out there wanted to take that on to see if we really are truly assessed at 100% of fair market value across all parcels, all tax parcels in Tompkins County. I don't think we can affirmatively make the statement yes. That's just my personal opinion, but I just want to raise that question because I think we need to be really careful there.
That would be the case at whatever percentage we chose, though.
Okay, I have Ann and then Mike Sigler.
I'll wait and go to Geo. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mike Sigler.
Mine is actually a policy question, so it's more, I was wondering if maybe you guys would look into this, because kind of something Deborah just said is interesting. So we don't have to assess at 100%. Can we take up that discussion of not choosing to?
That's what we did last month. And Jay came to us with a resolution that said we will move to a triennial assessment, which would be the lower percent, a different percentage, not 100%. And the committee decided we didn't want to do that. So we're having another discussion again about it.
But I don't mean as like a...
That's the policy.
That's the...
Like making that decision of what percentage we will assess at, that is the policy. Like there isn't a policy in the books that says, as far as I know, about like, here's how we assess or whatever. It's done by resolution. Is that what you mean?
Yes, so. I'm just thinking, I don't want us to become like California, where they have locked in a property tax that has never kept up with expenses, and that's made it very difficult until you sell your house. Although, I mean, we're breaking people, and I would like this legislature to kind of figure out a way to not do that, so.
And
That's-
moving
I
to
know that's what you're looking at. So.
Yeah, moving to a triennial assessment. I mean, there was a chart, which I think was sent to everybody, whereby it would significantly, and I guess in 06, 07, they moved to triennial, and it was the amount that people were paying went significantly down, but then it went back up. So, yeah.
Mike Lane.
The other thing that the annual reassessment does for us is make sure that all the property owners are paying their fair share. When you have new buyers and they're being assessed at right away whatever the property cost when they bought it, they are paying more, unless everybody's reassessed, than the older properties that aren't brought up to their share of the tax base. So that's where the essential fairness is in the annual reassessment, and why I think the legislature over the years has gravitated toward that. As I told the committee, there was a time when I was against annual, and I fought and argued for the triennial. But I've come around, and I think what we're doing is the right thing to do.
We'll go to our remote legislators in a moment. Mike Sigler, you want to respond to that?
My question's actually directed to Mike, to something you just said. And this is a sincere question. Is it fair, though? Because if you have somebody who bought their house at $100,000, I mean, that's what they were prepared to pay. That's what their salary has paid. And if their salary hasn't caught up to a $300,000 house, the person that's moving in who has the salary to afford a $300,000 house has set the market and is forcing that other person out because they're getting assessed on a capital gain, basically, that they haven't realized. So while I understand what you're saying,
I understand your question, but
is it fair?
But the job under New York state law is to assess properties equally. And so if that's what the market is, they all ought to be assessed for what the market is.
I have Ann, then Shauna.
Thank you. I was just thinking about the transparency, and that is really sticking with me, about people being able to read and understand their bills. So being assessed at 100%, or, the goal is to get as close to, is it 100%, is it a perfect system? No. But the goal of trying to get to 100% assessment is, I think, very helpful to our people who own property, but also to people who are looking to purchase. And if we stick with 100%, or every year redoing the assessment, then that doesn't inadvertently make it harder for first-time home buyers too. The longer we go without the number of years we increase how often we're going to reassess. And I also just wanted to point out, because I don't think it was mentioned yet, so our assessment also is what guides the towns, cities, villages, and the school districts. I believe that guides them, and that's what they base their tax levies on. So just think about that. It's not just for the county taxes.
Shauna.
Yeah, so thanks for letting me tune in remotely. I actually have been nailed with COVID. But I have seen exactly what Mike Lane is talking about in Burlington. I own a small little condo there, and it's interesting because they actually do not have a schedule in which they do assessments, and they assess everyone at 80%. And so you could have the exact same apartment in a condo. One of them is assessed at 100,000. The next one is assessed at 200,000. The next one's assessed at 300,000. And essentially it's the exact same place, and people are paying three different tax amounts. So I think in order to provide an equal tax base, the reality is a property is valued at what it's valued. And it doesn't matter if you bought it 20 years ago, there's still going to be an increased value over years as long as you have a booming housing market like we do.
Does Jay want to say anything?
I don't see Jay's hand up.
Since he hopped on?
He's just lurking.
Yeah, Jay, if you wanted to say anything, you're welcome to. Or
I'm just here to answer any questions. You know, the goal of the assessment is to distribute the tax burden equitably. The state law says we have to do it at a uniform percentage of value, so every property has to be assessed at the same percentage of market value every single year. So 100% is just easier because someone can look at their assessment and say, hey, could I sell my house for this? If we were to assess at 43% of value, they'd have to look at their assessment and divide by 0.43 in order to come up with what their market value really is. So it's half dozen one, six or the other, but the most transparent way to do this job and distribute our high tax burden equitably is to do it on an annual basis at 100%.
I think I'm going to ask us to stop there unless someone has a really burning question, because as you're getting, this is a very big topic. Amanda, can you tell us when your meeting is tentatively scheduled for? Because
Yeah.
I want to go.
Well, normally we meet on the first Thursday at 10 o'clock, and that does seem to work for the committee members, so that would be
February 1st, I think.
Yeah, look at that. Wait. Oh, yeah, February 1st.
At 10 o'clock.
So, you know, folks don't have to answer this right now, but, you know, the committee kind of already had thoughts about the direction that we wanted to go, but there's obviously other people who have other thoughts. If, you know, it would be really good if you came to the meeting and expressed those things, and, you know, Jay could answer more questions. because, you know, the committee can only do so much until we put forward a resolution to the whole legislature. So we can do that as well, and then we can continue to have this discussion here, which maybe is the best process. But it is important that we all participate in it, so.
Day, February 1st, 10 o'clock, probably. Okay. Last comments or questions about GO? Mike Lane.
Amanda, this is a new year for your committee and a way to start out. Can we have a new color for the agenda for our packets, please?
Please turn the cameras off.
I am going to talk to Brittany and Katrina, and I think we deserve a new color.
Like digital.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Rainbow with sparkles.
Rainbow.
Okay, next up, Planning, Energy, Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We have not met since our last legislature meeting. We are actually meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So set your alarm clocks in case this meeting runs late this evening, or stay overnight. So let's see. So tomorrow we only have a few things on the agenda, so hopefully it'll be short, knock on wood. Highlights include acceptance of a couple of grants. One is from regarding municipal waste reduction and recycling. Of course, that's the Recycling and Materials Management Department, and one for portable induction cooktops through the Planning Department. And lastly, we have an update on the continuation and modifications to the agricultural district. And this is something that the Agricultural and Farm Committee has been working on. And so then, so we're going to have also a public hearing scheduled to then look, and then we're going to have a hearing, and then we're going to that's going to come back to Peak, and we're going to vote on that. And then that will come before the full legislature. So probably be later in February before we cycle all through that. And I will be attending remotely, so our vice chair, legislator Dr. Pillar, will be chairing tomorrow in person. And I want to thank our members this year, also the other members, Randy Brown, Greg Mezzi, and Susan Curry. And so we'll be losing Susan Curry for next year, but we'll be welcoming Amanda Champion. And I want to thank everybody, and I look forward to another great year.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments for Ann? Mike Lane.
And I might have asked this question before, but the Ag District, which side of the lake are you looking at this point? The west side?
Enfield, Newfield, Danby. Yeah.
Okay, it's the west side then.
Right, Ag District 2. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else for Ann? Okay, thank you, Ann. For the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, the plan right now is we're only going to meet twice in 2024. It might have to change depending on circumstances, but we really have done the bulk of our work that we know of. There could be another set of tasks if some of the money that we've awarded has to return to us. But at this point, we're not anticipating a lot of that. So my plan was that after all the other committees had their schedules set, then we would go ahead and try to block out 2 times throughout this year that the Community Recovery Fund Committee could meet. And probably that first one will be in late March. That's what we'll be shooting for. So I did also want to mention that as your committee is trying to figure out a meeting time, that Monday morning is now available. The time that the Community Recovery Fund was scheduled for is now open and available. Any questions about the committee? Okay. There are no individual member filed resolutions that I'm aware of. How about the minutes of the previous meeting, January 2nd? Does somebody want to move those? Travis moves, Susan seconds. Any discussion about the minutes? Okay, let's go ahead and have a vote.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion? Yes. Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Sorry, having trouble. Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
13 ayes. Minutes approved.
Okay, is there any unfinished business? Okay, we are going to head into executive session. We have 4 executive session items. One that has to do with collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, and 3 matters that have to do with the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. We will vote in a moment to go into executive session, and we do not expect to take any action when we come out of executive session. Is there somebody that would make a motion to go into executive session? Greg Mezzi, is there a second? Travis Brooks? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion? Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
13 ayes. Motion passes.
Okay, then let's take a break so that we can take down the cameras and switch over. Probably take about 7 minutes. Plan to come back at 10 to 9. Thank you.
10 to 9.